Oligarchy refers to a political system where control is held by a small group of individuals. These individuals usually wield power indirectly by influencing the head of state, but sometimes they rule directly. Supporters of oligarchy often view it as an inevitable and natural structure. They frequently cite the Pareto principle, which in productivity suggests that 20% of people are responsible for 80% of output. They also reference Sturgeon's law, claiming that 90% of anything is substandard, and the iron law of oligarchy, which asserts that large organizations inevitably become oligarchic over time, and attempts to eliminate these tendencies only reinforce them. Confederation is a political arrangement where regional governments come together under a weak central government to address shared needs, like defense or economic challenges. These regional governments maintain most of their power and autonomy, often surpassing that of the central authority. Confederations are usually established through treaties to solve pressing issues, and the central government's role is to support its members, which remain independent states. Federation is a system that combines a strong central government, referred to as federal, with regional governments, dividing authority between the two levels. Unlike a confederation, in a federation, the federal government has greater power. Regional governments within a federation still maintain some independence and control over local laws, but they cannot operate completely autonomously as in a confederation. Countries like the United States, Germany, Switzerland, and Canada are examples of federations. Plutocracy describes a system where the wealthy hold power and influence. While not based on any formal political philosophy, it is often used as a critical term to describe societies where the rich control the government. Monarchy is a form of government in which the ruler, called a monarch, holds power for life or until they step down. The monarch's authority can range from symbolic and limited, as in a constitutional monarchy where power is regulated by a constitution, to absolute, where the monarch rules without restrictions. Monarchies typically pass power down through family lines, creating long dynasties. Republic is a form of government where political power is vested in the people through their elected representatives. Unlike monarchies where power is concentrated and often passed down hereditarily. In republics, representatives may or may not be freely elected by the public. Some historical and modern republics have selected representatives based on their status, with limited public input through elections. Aristocracy literally means rule of the best, and describes a system where political power is concentrated in the hands of a small group of elite individuals, known as aristocrats. In ancient Greece, this system was seen as a better alternative to monarchy, where only the most capable citizens, chosen through a rigorous selection process, were allowed to govern. Hereditary rule was discouraged unless the offspring showed greater skill or competence than the rest of society. Some view oligarchy as a corrupt version of aristocracy, since oligarchs often gain power through wealth or hereditary privilege rather than merit. Authoritarianism is a political system characterized by centralized power and a strong emphasis on obedience to authority. Political and civil freedoms are often limited in such systems. Classic monarchies often exhibited authoritarian traits, where the rulers suppressed opposition, censored the press, and imprisoned dissenters. Totalitarianism represents the extreme form of authoritarianism, where the dictator holds complete control over all aspects of public and private life. These regimes rely on extensive propaganda, typically spread through state-controlled media, to dominate the political, social, and cultural landscape. Dictators often use ideology to control the economy, education, arts, and even morality. A charismatic leader with a rigid worldview often governs totalitarian states. Theocracy refers to a government system where leaders claim to be guided by divine authority, acting as intermediaries between a higher power and the people. One of the best-known examples is ancient Egypt, where pharaohs were considered to have divine connections with gods like Horus and Osiris, and served as their representatives on earth. Technocracy is a form of government where experts in specific fields, such as science or engineering, are responsible for decision-making. Technocrats are chosen based on their knowledge and expertise, and the system emphasizes solving social and economic problems through the scientific method. The term can also refer to the broader idea of addressing societal issues with technical and scientific approaches. Democracy comes from the Greek meaning rule of the people, and is a system where the general population holds political power. A key feature of democracy is elections, where citizens either vote directly on laws, direct democracy, or elect representatives to make decisions on their behalf, representative democracy. There are various types of democracy. In a parliamentary democracy, voters elect representatives to a parliament, which makes laws. The parliament then chooses a leader for the executive branch, who remains in power until losing parliamentary support. In a presidential democracy, the president serves as both the head of state and government, and their authority is derived directly from the people through elections, not from a parliament. While many people view representative democracy as a favorable form of governance, significant portions of populations in various countries remain open to non-democratic alternatives. Feudalism was a system centered around the ownership and exchange of land, where an overlord granted land to a vassal in return for services or military assistance. This arrangement created a hierarchical society, with land being passed down through various ranks. At the top of this hierarchy were the king and the church, who typically owned more land than anyone else. Peasants worked for the lords, providing labor or a portion of their livestock in exchange for protection, a place to live, and land to farm. Demarchy was a system commonly used in ancient Athens, where public officials and rulers were chosen randomly. Supporters of this system argue that it removes the need for political campaigning, allowing those selected to focus solely on the policies and decisions at hand. Kleptocracy refers to a government run by corrupt leaders who use their political power to amass wealth at the expense of the population. Unlike plutocracy or oligarchy, kleptocrats secretly enrich themselves, often through illegal means like bribes or diverting state funds. These corrupt leaders frequently go unpunished and tend to move their stolen wealth to foreign nations in preparation for losing power. Anarchy is a system without rulers or authorities, centered on the belief in absolute freedom. The main principle of anarchism is the rejection of centralized government or the state, which anarchists view as unjust. They advocate for the creation of stateless societies built on voluntary cooperation and free associations. Corporatocracy describes a system where the government actively supports a select group of corporations, often by passing laws or regulations to suppress their competition. A related concept is lemon socialism, a term used to criticize governments that bail out failing or bankrupt companies, allowing them to stay afloat despite poor performance. Socialist State refers to a system derived from the ideology of state socialism, which calls for the working class to use state power to establish a socialist economy. In such states, the means of production, distribution, and exchange may be nationalized or owned by the government, or social values and workers' interests may be prioritized in policymaking. Communist state is typically a one-party system that aims to achieve socialism and move towards a fully communist society. These states often follow the principle of democratic centralism, where decisions made by a democratic vote are final and cannot be further debated. The goal is to streamline decision-making and prevent dissent that could hinder the implementation of the chosen course of action. Geniocracy is a system that requires a minimum level of intelligence for both political candidates and voters. The main criticism Geniocracy has of modern democracies is that politicians tend to focus more on winning popular support through emotional appeal rather than making thoughtful, long-term decisions. Geniocracy argues that political power is too important to be determined solely by popularity. Noocracy is a system where the most knowledgeable and wise individuals, typically philosophers or theologians, are the ones who hold political authority.